My fiancé asked for freedom to explore. So I used that freedom to marry the woman who chose me. My wife insisted she wanted an open relationship, but she complained when I slept with someone she knew. I'm Liam. I need to tell you about the woman I almost married and how her hypocrisy revealed her true character. At 35, I thought I had life figured out. 8 years with Chloe, the last 2 engaged, with our wedding just 3 months away. Everything seemed perfect, or at least stable enough to build a life on. The changes started gradually, about 18 months before our wedding. Chloe began expressing what I initially thought were normal pre-marriage anxieties. She'd wonder aloud if we were truly compatible or just comfortable. She'd question whether we were together by choice or simply by default after so many years. "Sometimes I wonder if we really know what we want," she said one evening while we cooked dinner together. "Like, we've been together since we were 27. How do we know this is actually what makes us happy versus just what we're used to? Because I'm happy, Chloe, aren't you?" "I think so, but how can I be sure if I've never really experienced anything else to compare it to?" These conversations became more frequent after her best friend Juliana got divorced. Juliana had been married for 12 years when her husband left her for someone she'd met at work. The divorce hit Juliana hard, but within a few months, she'd transformed herself. New clothes, new condo, dating multiple men. Chloe was fascinated by Juliana's reinvention. Juliana says she feels like she's living for the first time in years, Chloe told me after one of their weekly drinks. She said marriage made her forget who she was as an individual. "Juliana is processing a painful divorce, Chloe. Of course she's going to romanticize being single right now." Maybe, but she made a point about how people settle into relationships without ever really exploring what else is out there. How can you know you're with the right person if you've never seen what other options exist? I started noticing that Chloe's doubts always intensified after spending time with Juliana. Juliana, who had always been charming and successful with men, was now living the bachelor lifestyle Chloe had never experienced, and Chloe was clearly questioning what she might have missed. The pressure built slowly over 6 months. Chloe would bring up articles she'd read about couples who had explored non-monogamy before marriage. She'd mentioned statistics about relationship satisfaction and people who wondered, what if after committing too early? She'd reference expert opinions about the importance of conscious choice in relationships. "I found this interesting study," she'd say, showing me her phone. Couples who had more relationship experience before marriage reported higher satisfaction levels. "Chloe, where is this coming from? Are you having second thoughts about us?" "Not second thoughts, just thoughts about whether we're together because we're truly right for each other or because we've never experienced anything else." The conversations always circled back to the same theme. How could we be sure about each other without exploring other options first? Chloe presented it as an intellectual exercise, a way to make our eventual choice more meaningful, but I could see the real motivation underneath. She wanted to experience what Juliana was experiencing, but she didn't want to lose me in the process. 8 weeks before our wedding, Chloe made her proposal official. "I think we should try an open relationship," she said one evening, her voice carefully measured. "Just temporarily, just to make sure we're choosing each other for the right reasons." "Chloe, we're supposed to get married in 2 months. The venue is booked, the invitations are sent, our families have made travel plans." "I know the timing isn't ideal, but isn't it better to be absolutely certain now than to wonder later? What if we get married and then spend years wondering what we missed?" "I'm not wondering what I missed. I chose you." "But how do you know that choice is real if you've never made any other choice, if you've never been desired by other men or experienced different types of connection?" The argument that followed lasted hours. Chloe had clearly thought through every possible objection I might raise. When I pointed out the timing, she said postponing the wedding would be more expensive than being sure about our choice. When I said I didn't want to sleep with other people, she said I was letting fear hold me back from growth. When I said this could destroy our relationship, she said a relationship that couldn't survive exploration wasn't worth having. Look, she said finally, I'm not saying I want to leave you. I'm saying I want to choose you consciously instead of just accepting you by default. This would be temporary, 3 months maximum. And it's not about finding someone better. It's about appreciating what we have more deeply. I spent 3 sleepless nights thinking about her proposal. Part of me recognized the manipulation in her timing and her arguments. But another part of me was terrified that if I refused, Chloe would always wonder what she'd missed, and that wondering would poison our marriage even if we went through with it. Finally, I agreed. Not because I believed in the concept, but because I was exhausted from arguing, and because Chloe had made it clear that my refusal would be interpreted as fear or insecurity. Okay, I said. 3 months. 3, but with clear boundaries. Chloe's face lit up with more excitement than she'd shown about anything related to our relationship in months. That should have been my first warning. What boundaries? She asked. Complete honesty about what we're doing, protection always, and nothing that risks our health or safety. Of course. And Liam, this is going to make us stronger. You'll see. Within days, Chloe had updated her dating profiles and was actively scheduling dates. She approached the whole thing with an organizational efficiency that suggested she'd been planning this for longer than she'd admitted. New clothes appeared in her closet. She started going to the gym more frequently. She even got a new haircut. Just want to put my best foot forward, she explained when I noticed the changes. The transformation was striking. Chloe had an energy and enthusiasm I hadn't seen in years. The problem was that none of that energy was directed toward me. She was excited about the possibilities ahead of her, not about appreciating what she already had. Within 2 weeks, she was going on 3 or 4 dates per week. She'd come home energized, sometimes staying up late, texting with new connections. She'd shower immediately when she got home and would be vague about details when I asked about her evenings. "How was your date?" I'd ask. "Good. Interesting conversation. He's a graphic designer. Very different perspective on things." Different how? Just different. Fresh. Sometimes it's nice to talk to someone who doesn't know all your stories already. The casual way she dismissed our shared history stung, as if knowing each other deeply was a limitation rather than an intimacy. Meanwhile, I was struggling to even begin exploring. The idea of dating other women while wearing my engagement ring felt surreal. When friends tried to set me up with people, I declined. When women approached me at coffee shops or bookstores, I felt guilty for even considering their interest. "How's your exploration going?" Chloe would ask occasionally, though she seemed more relieved than curious when I said I was taking things slowly. "Maybe you're being too picky," she suggested after I'd turned down another setup. "The point is to experience different types of people, not to find your soulmate. I'm just not comfortable jumping into bed with strangers." "You don't have to jump into bed with anyone. Just be open to connection. Be open to seeing what else is out there." But Chloe's own exploration was clearly physical. She was staying out late, coming home with that particular satisfaction of someone who'd been intimate with someone new. She tried to hide it, but after 8 years together, I could read the signs. 6 weeks into the experiment, I finally forced myself to go on a date. A colleague had been trying to set me up with her sister Ethel for months, and I finally said yes. Ethel was attractive, funny, successful, objectively a great catch. But sitting across from her at dinner, all I could think about was how she wasn't Chloe. How her laugh wasn't familiar, how her stories didn't include me. How starting over with someone new felt exhausting rather than exciting. When Ethel walked me to my car and tried to kiss me goodnight, I let her. It was pleasant enough, but it felt like betraying something sacred. I drove home feeling empty rather than exhilarated. "How was your date?" Chloe asked when I got home. She was already in bed scrolling through her phone. "Fine. Nice lady. Just nice. She was great, actually. Very charming. For the first time since we'd started this experiment, Chloe looked up from her phone with something that might have been concern. "Are you going to see her again?" "I might." "Well, good for you. That's what this is about, right? Exploring." But I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her jaw tightened slightly. Chloe wanted me to explore in theory, but the reality of me actually connecting with someone else clearly bothered her. Over the following weeks, I went on a few more dates with Ethel. She was patient with my obvious emotional unavailability, understanding when I explained that I was figuring some things out. We had good conversations, and I found myself genuinely enjoying her company, though I wasn't ready for anything physical beyond kissing. Chloe, meanwhile, was deeper into her exploration than ever. She was now seeing 3 different men regularly: David, Robert, and Sal, a gallery curator. She developed a rotation system, carefully scheduling her time to maximize her experiences. "This is exactly what I needed," she told me one morning over coffee. "I'm learning so much about myself, about what I want in a partner." "What are you learning?" "Just different people bring out different sides of you. David challenges me intellectually. Robert is very zen, very present. Sal is creative and spontaneous. It's fascinating how different relationships can be." "And what does that tell you about us?" "It tells me that what we have is just one type of connection, and now I'll be able to appreciate it more because I understand what else exists." But her behavior suggested otherwise. Chloe seemed less interested in our relationship, not more. She was distracted during our conversations, frequently checking her phone, clearly more invested in her new connections than in examining what we had together. 2 months into the experiment, something shifted. Chloe had been spending more time with Sal, the gallery curator. She'd mentioned him more frequently, always with a particular warmth in her voice. When she talked about their dates, she used words like inspiring and alive, words she hadn't used to describe me in years. One evening, she came home later than usual, glowing with the satisfaction of new romance. "Sal's incredible. He sees the world in this amazing way. Everything is art to him. Everything has potential for beauty." "He sounds special." "He is." She caught herself, seeming to remember who she was talking to. "I mean, it's just nice to experience a different perspective." But the damage was done. Chloe was developing real feelings for Sal, and it was obvious to both of us. That's when I made my decision about Ethel. She was sweet, but couldn't really feel that connection with her. On the other hand, I'd been talking to Juliana, Chloe's best friend. I'd been thinking about her more since this whole experiment started. Juliana had always been attractive, successful, charming. During our years together, I'd noticed how men responded to her, how she carried herself with confidence that Chloe sometimes lacked. But more than that, I'd always sensed an undercurrent of attraction between us that we'd both carefully ignored out of respect for Chloe. Juliana had been supportive during this difficult time, checking in on me occasionally via text to see how I was handling the situation. Her messages were always careful, appropriate, but there was a warmth there that felt genuine. "How are you holding up with all this craziness?" she'd texted a few weeks earlier. "It's harder than I expected," I'd replied. "Chloe is an idiot if she doesn't realize what she has." The comment had stayed with me. When was the last time Chloe had made me feel like something precious she was lucky to have? The next time Juliana texted to check on me, I suggested we meet for coffee. "I could use someone to talk to who understands the situation," I wrote. "Of course, tomorrow afternoon." We met at a quiet cafe downtown. Juliana was waiting when I arrived, standing up when she saw me enter, a small courtesy that Chloe had stopped extending years ago. "Liam," she said, pulling out my chair, "you look great. How are you really doing?" "Honestly, I feel like I'm watching my fiancé fall in love with someone else while I'm supposed to pretend it's healthy for our relationship." Juliana's expression darkened. "She's falling for one of these men?" "I think so. There's this gallery curator, Sal. The way she talks about him? I shrugged, trying to appear casual, though my heart was breaking. Jesus, Liam, I'm sorry. When I suggested she explore her options, I never imagined she'd be stupid enough to actually develop feelings for someone else. I looked up sharply. You suggested she explore her options? Juliana shifted uncomfortably. I mean, we talked about it, about pre-marriage doubts, whether people settle too early. But I thought she'd get it out of her system and realize how good she has it with you. So this was your idea? Not exactly. Chloe was already questioning things. I told her about how liberated I felt after my divorce, how I wished I'd experienced more before settling down. I stared at her, processing this information. Juliana, do you realize what you've done? Look, I thought Chloe would go on a few dates, remember why she loves you, and come back more committed than ever. I never thought she'd be dumb enough to catch feelings. But you planted the idea. Chloe was already having doubts. I just helped her articulate them. Better she deal with this now than spend your whole marriage wondering what she missed. We sat in silence for a moment, both contemplating the mess that had been created. Can I ask you something? Juliana said finally. Sure. How are you handling all this? Really? I feel invisible. Chloe is so excited about these other men, so energized by new connections. Meanwhile, I feel like I've become part of the furniture, something she assumes will always be there while she goes off exploring. You're not furniture, Liam. You're extraordinary. Any woman would be lucky to have your attention. Not any woman, apparently. Chloe is an idiot. She's had 8 years to appreciate what she has, and instead she's chasing novelty, but that's her loss. Juliana leaned forward, her voice gentle but intense. Liam, you deserve someone who doesn't need to explore other options to realize your worth. You deserve someone who looks at you and thinks, how did I get so lucky? When was the last time Chloe looked at me that way? I don't know, but I look at you that way every time I see you. The words hung between us, charged with possibility and danger. Juliana, I know this is complicated. I know, but Liam, I've been attracted to you since the day Chloe introduced us. And watching her take you for granted while she's off playing the field makes me furious. You're her best friend. I am. And that's exactly why this is so hard. Do you know what it's like to watch your friend treat something precious like it's ordinary? We talked for 2 hours, the conversation growing more intimate and charged. Juliana told me about noticing me at parties over the years, about thinking Chloe didn't deserve me, about wishing she'd met me first. I found myself opening up about feeling undesired, unappreciated, like Chloe was doing me a favor by staying with me. You're not ordinary, Liam. You're intelligent, handsome, talented, kind. You're the kind of man women dream about finding. Then why doesn't Chloe see that? Because Chloe's comfortable. She's had you for so long that she's forgotten you're a choice, not a given. When we parted that afternoon, Juliana hugged me goodbye. Longer than necessary. Closer than appropriate. I could feel the attraction crackling between us. Dangerous and tempting. That evening, Chloe came home from another date with Sal, glowing with the satisfaction of new romance. She barely noticed I was there, disappearing into the shower and then into bed with her phone, texting someone who made her smile in ways I hadn't seen in years. I lay awake that night thinking about Juliana's words, about feeling desired and appreciated, about what it might be like to be with someone who didn't need to explore other options to realize my worth. The next few weeks were a revelation. Juliana and I began texting more frequently, then meeting for coffee, then for longer conversations that stretched into evening. She was everything Chloe had stopped being. Attentive, curious, completely focused on me when we were together. "Tell me about your work," she'd say, leaning forward with genuine interest. "What projects are you excited about?" When was the last time Chloe had asked about my work with real curiosity rather than polite obligation? "I love how passionate you get when you talk about coding," Juliana said one evening as we walked along the river. "Your whole face lights up. It's beautiful to watch." Chloe used to notice things like that about me. Now she barely looked up from her phone when I talked about anything. The tension between Juliana and me built slowly, carefully. We both knew we were walking toward a line we shouldn't cross, but the attraction was becoming impossible to ignore. More than that, Juliana made me feel like myself again. Interesting, desirable, worth listening to. "Liam," she said one evening as we sat in her car after dinner, "I need to tell you something." "What?" "I'm falling for you. I know the timing is terrible, I know the situation is impossible, but I can't pretend anymore. Being with you these past few weeks has been the best part of my days." "Juliana, I know you're still engaged. I know Chloe is my friend, but watching her treat you like an option while she's off exploring makes me sick. You deserve so much better than that." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to be with you, really be with you, and I think you want that too." She was right. Over the weeks we'd been spending time together, I'd fallen for Juliana too, not just because she was attractive and charming, but because she saw me, really saw me. She made me feel valuable, desired, interesting, all the things Chloe had slowly stopped making me feel. When Juliana kissed me that night, it felt like coming alive after months of feeling invisible. All the attention, desire, and appreciation I'd been missing was suddenly there, focused entirely on me. "I've wanted to do that for so long," she whispered against my lips. "How long?" "Since the first time I saw you. You were wearing this gray sweater at David and Sarah's party 3 years ago. Chloe was checking her phone while you told a story, and I remember thinking she had no idea how incredible the man standing next to her was." "You've been thinking about me for 3 years?" "I've been trying not to think about you for 3 years, but watching Chloe take you for granted while she's off playing with other men, I can't stay quiet anymore." 2 weeks later, Juliana and I slept together. It was everything physical intimacy should be, but hadn't been with Chloe for years. Passionate, intense, completely present. Juliana made me feel beautiful, desired, cherished in ways I'd forgotten were possible. "You're incredible," she murmured as we lay in her bed afterward. "I can't believe Chloe is stupid enough to risk losing you." "She doesn't think she's risking losing you. She thinks I'll wait around while she figures out what she wants. Will you?" "I don't know anymore." For 3 weeks, I lived a double life. During the day, I'd come home to Chloe, who was increasingly distracted by her relationship with Sal. In the evenings, when Chloe was out on her dates, I'd be with Juliana, who made me feel like the center of her universe. The contrast was devastating. Chloe would come home from dates energized and glowing, full of stories about Sal's creativity and spontaneity. Meanwhile, Juliana would text me throughout the day, remembering details about my projects, asking how I was feeling, making me feel constantly valued. Sal has this amazing perspective on art. He sees beauty everywhere. It's inspiring to be around someone so positive and creative. That same evening, Juliana said, "I love watching you work on your coding. You get this intense focus like you're solving puzzles only you can see. It's sexy as hell." Chloe was falling in love with Sal's novelty. Juliana was falling in love with me, as I actually was. But I knew this couldn't continue indefinitely. Chloe's experiment was supposed to end in 2 weeks, and decisions would have to be made. More importantly, the guilt was eating at me. Not guilt about betraying Chloe. She had opened this door. But guilt about the deception, about Juliana betraying her friendship, about the mess we were all creating. That's when I decided it was time for the truth. "Chloe," I said one evening when she came home from another date with Sal, "we need to talk." "Sure, what's up?" she asked absently, already reaching for her phone. "About our experiment, about what we've both discovered." "Oh, right." She put her phone down, giving me partial attention. "How has it been for you? You've been pretty quiet about your dates lately." "Actually, I've been seeing someone regularly." Chloe looked surprised. "Really? Who?" "Juliana." The phone slipped from Chloe's hand, clattering onto the coffee table. "What did you say?" I said, "I've been seeing Juliana for the past month." Chloe stared at me like I'd slapped her. "Juliana? My Juliana?" "Your best friend, Juliana. Yes." But that's—" She struggled for words. "Liam, that's not what this was supposed to be about." What was it supposed to be about? Exploring options with strangers? Not sleeping with my best friend. "You never specified that strangers were required. You just said we should explore other connections." "But Juliana knows about us. She knows we're engaged. Friends don't do that to each other." "Friends also don't manipulate each other into open relationships so they can explore other men without guilt." Chloe stood up, pacing now. "This is completely different, and you know it." "How is it different?" "Because she's my friend. Because there are boundaries. Because you specifically chose the one person who could hurt me most." "I chose someone who appreciates me, Chloe. Someone who makes me feel valued instead of taken for granted." "Valued?" Chloe's voice cracked. "Liam, you're engaged to me. You're supposed to be valued by me." "When? When do you value me, Chloe? When you're texting Sal during our conversations? When you come home glowing from dates with other men?" "When you talk about how inspiring and creative your new boyfriends are?" "That's different. That's just exploration." "So is this. I explored, and I found someone who sees my worth without needing to shop around first." Chloe slumped back onto the couch, her head in her hands. "How could you do this to me?" "How could I do what? Take advantage of the open relationship you insisted we needed? Exercise the same freedom you've been exercising for 3 months? But not with her. Anyone but her." "Why? What makes Juliana different from David or Robert or Sal?" Chloe looked up, her eyes wild. "Because she's my best friend. Because I trusted her. Because out of all the women in this city, you chose the one who knows exactly how to hurt me. Or maybe I chose the one who actually sees what you've been too blind to see. What's that supposed to mean?" "It means Juliana recognizes my value without needing a 3-month experiment to figure it out. It means she makes me feel handsome and interesting and worth fighting for. It means she doesn't need to explore other options to know what she wants." Chloe was quiet for a long moment, processing. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller, defeated. "Are you leaving me for her?" "I'm leaving you from me, Chloe, because I finally remembered what I deserve. And it's not someone who needs to date other people to appreciate what he has. But I do appreciate you. This whole thing was about appreciating you more." "No, it wasn't. This whole thing was about you wanting to experience what Juliana was experiencing without losing your safety net. You wanted to explore while knowing I'd be here waiting when you were done playing. That's not true. Isn't it, Chloe? You spent 3 months having the time of your life with other men while I sat here feeling like I wasn't enough for you. You've been falling in love with Sal while treating our relationship like an obligation." I haven't been falling in love with Sal. Yes, you have. You light up when you talk about him. You're more excited about seeing him than you've been about seeing me in years.
You think he's creative and inspiring and spontaneous? All the things you apparently don't think I am. Chloe opened her mouth to argue, but closed it again, knowing I was right. So what now? She asked finally. Now you get exactly what you asked for. Freedom to choose. The only difference is that I get to choose too. The next evening, I arranged the confrontation I knew was inevitable. Juliana arrived first, looking tense but resolved. Chloe was already pacing when Juliana walked into our living room. "You son of a bitch," Chloe said without preamble. "Chloe, let me explain." "Explain what? How you convinced me to suggest an open relationship so you could steal my fiancé?" Juliana remained calm. "I didn't convince you of anything. You came to those conclusions on your own. But you influenced me. You told me about how great it was being single, how much I was missing. I told you how I felt about my own situation. You're the one who decided that meant you should risk your relationship." "Risk it? I wasn't risking it. I was exploring while knowing Liam would be here when I was done." The words hung in the air, confirming everything I'd suspected about Chloe's mindset. "And there it is," I said quietly. "You thought I'd wait around while you played the field." Chloe turned to me, her face flushed. "That's not what I meant. That's exactly what you meant. You wanted to explore your options while keeping me as your backup plan. Liam, it's not fair. What's not fair is expecting me to sit here while you fall in love with other men and then act shocked when I find someone who actually values me." Juliana stepped forward. "Chloe, do you hear yourself? You're angry because Liam found someone who appreciates him while you've been off exploring other relationships. It's different, and you know it. How is it different? Because she's my friend. Because I trusted her. Because there are codes. Boundaries." "What boundaries?" "You opened your relationship. You told Liam to explore other connections. He did exactly what you asked him to do. Not with her. Why not me?" Chloe struggled for an answer. Because you get everything. Men, success, options. The one thing I had that you didn't was Liam, and now you've taken that too. The admission hung between us like a confession. This wasn't about friendship or betrayal. This was about Chloe feeling like she couldn't compete with Juliana and being furious that her one advantage had been eliminated. "So Liam was a possession to you?" Juliana asked quietly. "Something you owned that I couldn't have?" "That's not what I meant." "That's exactly what you meant. You didn't see him as a person making her own choice. You saw him as your territory." I stepped forward. "Chloe, listen to yourself. You're not upset because you lost me. You're upset because Juliana won me. I'm upset because my best friend betrayed me." "Your best friend fell in love with someone who was available because you made him available. Someone you'd been taking for granted for months. I never took you for granted. You spent 3 months dating other men while making it clear that I was your fallback option. How is that not taking me for granted?" Chloe looked between Juliana and me, her face cycling through emotions: rage, hurt, confusion. "So what happens now?" she asked finally. "Now, you deal with the consequences of getting exactly what you asked for," I said. "What does that mean?" "It means you wanted freedom to explore your options, and you got it. You just didn't expect that I'd find a better option while you were looking." "A better option?" Chloe's voice cracked. "Someone who doesn't need to shop around to appreciate what he has. Someone who makes me feel valued instead of taken for granted. Someone who fights for me instead of assuming I'll always be available." Juliana moved closer to me, her hand finding mine. "Chloe, I'm sorry about the timing and the circumstances, but I'm not sorry about falling for Liam. He's incredible, and frankly, you're an idiot for not seeing that. He was engaged to me.
He was engaged to someone who needed permission to appreciate him. That's not the same thing. Chloe slumped into a chair.
The fight going out of her. I can't believe this is happening. You made it happen, I said, not unkindly. You opened this door, Chloe. You convinced me that exploring other options would strengthen our relationship. You just assumed I wouldn't find anything better. I thought you loved me. I did love you, but love isn't enough when the other person doesn't value what they have. We sat in heavy silence for several minutes. Did you plan this? Chloe asked Juliana finally. No. I suggested you work through your doubts because I thought you'd realize how good you had it with Liam. I never imagined you'd be stupid enough to actually pursue other men seriously. But you wanted him. I've been attracted to him for years, but I never would have acted on it if you hadn't made him available. Made him available? Chloe looked confused. Chloe, you spent months making Liam feel like he wasn't enough for you. You criticized him indirectly, made him feel insecure, then asked him to date other people while you fell in love with someone else. You made it clear that he was your backup plan, not your first choice. That's not true, is it? When was the last time you told Liam he was handsome? When was the last time you seemed excited to spend time with him? When was the last time you made him feel like a priority instead of an obligation? Chloe was quiet, unable to answer. Meanwhile, Juliana continued. Liam is intelligent, handsome, funny, talented. Any woman would be lucky to have his attention. You just took that for granted. So you decided to take advantage of my mistake? I decided to show him what it feels like to be truly valued, something you'd apparently forgotten how to do. Chloe looked at me with something like desperation. Liam, can't we try to work this out? Call off the wedding? Postpone everything? Figure this out? Chloe, you spent 3 months showing me exactly how you feel about our relationship. You've been more excited about Sal than about me. You've treated our engagement like something you needed to test, rather than something you were grateful for. But I love you. You love the security of knowing I'll be there.
That's not the same thing as loving me. That's not fair. What's not fair is asking someone to marry you while simultaneously dating other people to make sure they can't do better. Juliana squeezed my hand. Liam deserves someone who doesn't need to explore other options to know his worth. And you're that someone? Chloe asked bitterly. I'm someone who's been watching you take an incredible man for granted for years. I'm someone who knows exactly how lucky I am to have his attention. This is insane, Chloe said, but her voice lacked conviction. This is honest, I replied. For the first time in months, someone is being completely honest about what I deserve. The conversation continued for another hour, but the outcome was inevitable. Chloe had gotten exactly what she'd asked for, the freedom to explore her options. She just hadn't expected me to find something better while she was looking. 3 weeks later, I moved out of the apartment Chloe and I had shared. The wedding was officially canceled. Deposits lost, $15,000 gone, families disappointed. But for the first time in months, I felt like myself again. Juliana and I didn't rush into anything serious immediately. We both knew our relationship had been born from complicated circumstances that needed time to resolve. But what we had was real, built on genuine appreciation, mutual respect, and the kind of desire that doesn't require comparison shopping to recognize. 6 months later, Chloe reached out one final time. I made a mistake, she said, when I agreed to meet her for coffee. I see that now. I had something real with you, and I threw it away because I was curious about what else was out there. Yes, you did. Can't we try again? I understand now what I lost. Chloe, you didn't lose me. You gave me away. You spent months convincing me to look elsewhere. And when I found someone who actually valued me, you were shocked. But we had 8 years together. We had 8 years where you gradually took me more and more for granted. This experiment just made that visible. I thought you'd wait for me to finish exploring.
I know you did, and that assumption told me everything I needed to know about how you saw me and our relationship. But I love you. You loved having me as your sure thing. That's not the same as loving me. Chloe looked older, diminished. Her exploration had ultimately led her exactly where Juliana had predicted, to the realization that she'd had something special and had been too blind to see it. What about Juliana? Are you happy with her? I'm happy with someone who doesn't need to explore other options to know my worth. Someone who chose me and keeps choosing me every day. But doesn't it bother you that she betrayed our friendship? She didn't betray your friendship, Chloe. She fell in love with someone you made available. If you hadn't suggested the open relationship, none of this would have happened. I just wanted to be sure about us. And now you are sure. The question is whether that certainty means anything when it came at the cost of losing what you were trying to protect. Chloe was quiet for a long moment. Do you think you'll marry her? I think I'll marry someone who doesn't need permission to appreciate what he has. A year later, Juliana and I were engaged, not because we felt pressured by timelines or social expectations, but because we'd built something genuine together, something based on choice rather than habit, appreciation rather than assumption. The proposal happened on a quiet Sunday morning in her kitchen while we made breakfast together. No grand gestures, no public displays, just Juliana looking at me over coffee and saying, I want to spend my life making sure you never feel taken for granted again. Is that a proposal? I asked, laughing. It's a promise, but yes, it's also a proposal. She pulled out a simple, elegant ring. Liam, will you marry someone who already knows exactly how lucky she is to have you? The contrast to Chloe's proposal 2 years earlier was stark. Chloe had proposed because it was the expected next step after 6 years together. Juliana proposed because she couldn't imagine her life without me in it. Our wedding was small, intimate, focused on commitment rather than spectacle. During our vows, Juliana said, I promise to choose you every day. Not because you're convenient or familiar, but because you're extraordinary. I promise to see your worth not in comparison to others, but as an absolute truth. When it was my turn, I said, I promise to never settle for being taken for granted again, and I promise to be with someone who doesn't need permission to love me fully. In the small crowd, I noticed some of our mutual friends looked uncomfortable. Chloe and I had been together for 8 years. Our breakup had created ripples through our social circle. Some people felt I'd moved on too quickly, that I should have tried harder to save my relationship with Chloe. Others whispered about Juliana stealing her best friend's fiancé. But I had learned something important through this experience. Other people's comfort with your choices is not your responsibility. I'd spent too many years making myself smaller to make Chloe comfortable. I wasn't going to make that mistake again. Chloe had continued dating Sal for a few months after our breakup, but that relationship eventually fizzled. According to mutual friends, Chloe struggled with the realization that her grass is greener mentality had cost her something irreplaceable. She'd gotten her freedom to explore, but the exploration had taught her exactly the wrong lesson, that what she'd had with me was special, not because it was familiar, but because it was rare. 6 months after our wedding, I ran into Chloe at a bookstore downtown. She looked tired, older somehow. The confident energy she'd had during her exploration phase was gone, replaced by something that looked like regret. Liam, she said, approaching cautiously. Congratulations on the wedding. I heard it was beautiful. Thank you. You look happy. I am happy. We stood in awkward silence for a moment before Chloe spoke again. I've been thinking a lot about what happened, about the choices I made, and I realized I convinced myself that exploring options would make me appreciate what I had. But really, I just wanted to experience what I thought I'd missed without risking what I already had. I know you were never supposed to find someone else. You were supposed to wait for me to finish playing and then be grateful when I chose you again.
The honesty was jarring, even though I'd understood this dynamic all along. But that's not how choice works, I said. Real choice requires real risk. You can't explore other options while keeping someone as your backup plan. I see that now. Too late. But I see it. Chloe, what did you think would happen? That I'd sit around waiting while you fell in love with other men? That I'd be there whenever you decided you were done exploring? Yes, she admitted quietly. That's exactly what I thought would happen. Why? Because you'd been there for 8 years. Because you'd never left before. Because I thought your love was unconditional. My love was unconditional, but my presence wasn't, and you confused the two. Chloe nodded slowly. Juliana was right about me taking you for granted. Yes, he was. Does it bother you that she manipulated the situation? That she influenced me to suggest the open relationship so she could have a chance with you? I'd thought about this question many times over the past year. Had Juliana manipulated Chloe? Had she planted seeds knowing they might grow into the destruction of our relationship? I think Juliana saw an opportunity, I said finally. But you gave him that opportunity. If you'd been secure in our relationship, if you'd truly valued what we had, no amount of influence from Juliana could have convinced you to risk it. So, you don't blame her? I blame her for not being honest with you about her intentions. But I don't blame her for recognizing that you were taking me for granted and acting accordingly. She should have told me she was interested in you. Would that have changed anything? Would you have suddenly started appreciating me more if you'd known your best friend found me attractive? Chloe was quiet, considering. Probably not. I probably would have just been more paranoid. Exactly. The problem wasn't Juliana's interest in me. The problem was your lack of interest in appreciating what you had. I did appreciate you. You appreciated having me. That's different from appreciating me. We talked for another few minutes before parting ways. As I watched Chloe walk away, I felt something I hadn't expected. Pity. Not condescending pity, but genuine sadness for someone who'd learned an important lesson too late to benefit from it. That evening, I told Juliana about the encounter. How do you feel about seeing her? Juliana asked. Sad, mostly. She looked lost. Do you regret how things happened? I considered the question carefully. I regret that it happened the way it did. I wish Chloe had been able to appreciate what we had without needing to explore other options first. I wish you hadn't had to betray a friendship to be with me. But I don't regret the outcome. Even knowing that our relationship started under complicated circumstances, our relationship started because you saw something in me that Chloe had stopped seeing. Yes, the circumstances were messy, but what we built together is real. Juliana pulled me closer. I want you to know something. Even if Chloe had never suggested the open relationship, I would have eventually told you how I felt really. I couldn't have watched her take you for granted forever. Watching someone incredible be treated as ordinary was killing me. But you were her best friend. I was, and that's exactly why I couldn't stay silent. Do you know what it's like to watch your friend have everything you want and treat it like it's nothing special? You could have talked to her about it, told her she was taking you for granted. I tried, in subtle ways, but Chloe wasn't interested in hearing that she was failing as a partner. She was more interested in justifying her doubts than addressing them. So you decided to act. I decided to stop protecting someone who wasn't protecting what he had. 2 years into our marriage, Juliana and I faced our first real test. She was offered a job opportunity in another city, a significant career advancement that would require us to relocate. In my previous relationship, I would have automatically supported Chloe's career moves without considering my own needs, but Juliana approached the decision as a team. "What do you think?" she asked after telling me about the offer.
It's an amazing opportunity for you. For us, if we do this, we do it together, and it has to work for both of us. What about my clients here, my network? We'll figure it out. Maybe this is a chance for you to expand nationally. Maybe it's an opportunity to try something new. But we decide together. The conversation continued over several weeks. Juliana made it clear that she wouldn't take the job unless I was genuinely excited about the move, not just willing to sacrifice for her career. In the end, we decided to stay. The job was a good opportunity, but our life together was more important than any single career move. "Are you sure?" I asked when she turned down the offer. "I'm sure. I spent too many years watching Chloe prioritize everything except her relationship with you. I'm not making that mistake. But this was important to you. You're more important to me. And besides, the right opportunity will come along again. The right partner doesn't." This was the difference between being valued and being taken for granted. Juliana made decisions with me, not for me or despite me. 3 years after our wedding, we bought a house together. As we signed the mortgage papers, I thought about the home Chloe and I had planned to buy after our wedding. We'd looked at houses, but every conversation had been about what Chloe wanted. Location convenient to her office, style that reflected her taste, budget that prioritized her financial goals. With Juliana, house hunting was a collaboration. We talked about what we both needed in a space, what compromises we were willing to make, how we create a home that reflected both of our personalities. "This feels right," Juliana said as we walked through the house that would become ours. "It does. You know what I love most about it?" "What?" "It's ours. Not mine that you're moving into. Not yours that I'm joining. Ours. From the beginning." That night, as we celebrated our new home, Juliana said something that stayed with me. "I want you to know that I never take for granted that you chose me. Even now, 3 years in. I know you could have chosen someone else. You could choose someone else tomorrow. That possibility keeps me grateful. You don't need to worry about that. I'm not worried. I'm motivated."
Knowing that you're with me by choice, not by default or habit, makes me want to be worthy of that choice every day. This was what Chloe had never understood. Love isn't something you earn once and then coast on forever. It's something you choose continuously, and that choice requires ongoing effort to be worthy of. 5 years after our wedding, Juliana and I started trying to have children. The process was more difficult than we'd expected, involving months of testing, treatment, and disappointment. During this stressful time, I saw another fundamental difference between my two relationships. When Chloe and I had faced challenges, financial stress, family drama, career setbacks, she'd often seemed to blame me somehow, as if problems were evidence that I wasn't worth the trouble. Juliana, facing the stress of infertility treatments, became more protective and supportive. "This is hard," she said, after another negative pregnancy test. "But we're in it together. Sometimes I wonder if you'd be better off with someone else, someone who could give you children easily." Juliana looked at me seriously. "Liam, listen to me. I didn't fall in love with your fertility. I fell in love with you. Whatever happens, we'll handle it together."
But what if we can't have children? Then we'll build a different kind of family, through adoption, through being incredible aunts and uncles, through creating a life that's meaningful in other ways. But I'm not going anywhere. After a year of treatment, we successfully conceived. Our daughter was born healthy and perfect, and watching Juliana become a father was like watching her discover a new dimension of herself. "She's incredible," she whispered as she held our daughter for the first time. "She is. Thank you for building this life with me. Thank you for making me feel worthy of building it." Looking back now, 7 years after leaving Chloe, I can see how that painful experience taught me the most important lesson of my adult life. Never settle for being someone's backup plan, safety net, or default choice. Chloe taught me what it feels like to be taken for granted, to have your worth questioned, to be treated as an option rather than a priority. That experience was painful, but it was also invaluable. It showed me exactly what I didn't want in a relationship. Juliana taught me what it feels like to be truly valued, not despite my flaws, but including them. Not as a consolation prize, but as a first choice. Not as someone who's lucky to be chosen, but as someone whose choice is the real prize. The irony isn't lost on me that Juliana, who had engineered the situation that ended my engagement, turned out to be exactly the kind of partner I deserved. Someone who didn't need to explore other options to know my worth. Someone who fought for me instead of assuming I'd always be available. Chloe got exactly what she'd asked for: the freedom to explore her options and the knowledge that comes from comparison. She just learned too late that some knowledge comes at too high a price. I got something I hadn't known I was missing: a partner who sees loving me as a privilege rather than an obligation. Someone who doesn't need permission to appreciate what he has. Sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is someone forcing you to see what you've been settling for. Chloe's experiment didn't strengthen our relationship as she'd hoped. Instead, it revealed that our relationship had been running on momentum rather than genuine mutual choice. For that revelation, as painful as it was, I'll always be grateful.
In the end, Chloe learned that real choice requires real risk. And I learned that being someone's option is no way to live. I walked away from a long engagement and into a marriage where I am cherished, not just tolerated, by Juliana. Never let anyone confuse your unconditional love with your unconditional presence. Thanks for listening. Drop a comment and let me know your biggest takeaway from this story.